welcome to Young and Limitless. In this short conversation with my bestest friend Jenny, we're going to be talking about how to enable each other, regardless of colour, regardless of gender, and everything else that you can describe yourself. But it's good to talk, it's good to share, and yeah, so that's what we're just going to talk about. So hi Jenny.
Hello.
Where are you from?
I'm down here in the sunny but very windy parts of Plymouth, down in Devon. So.
Are you close to the sea?
Yeah, not far, not far. I can just get in my car and be looking at the sea in about 10 minutes drive. So yeah, not too bad at all. But it's just a bit blowy though.
So how have you survived now coming out of lockdown?
It's been a difficult one actually. It's hopefully I've, as a youth worker and working with people in 20 odd years, I've struggled not having the human contact and interaction with people. So I can't wait to get out of lockdown, but it is still going to be that our company's saying we need to wear gloves and masks and all this, which I still struggle with the masks, but it's getting there. It's getting back to how I prefer to work. But yeah, it's been bizarre times, very bizarre times. Yeah.
And it's like one thing and then another thing. So we had the lockdown, now we're in an economic crisis, and now the whole race thing, the whole slavery and injustice, and
it's imploded.
Yeah, so we've been, like you said, we've been quiet, we've been held like locked away, and now we can go out a little bit more, have a little bit more freedom and talk. Even I'm finding it hard to figure out what I can say, because I don't want to offend anybody, but I also know, this whole podcast is about helping people to have a voice, and knowing that your voice, regardless of what your experience is still valuable. And just how we do it.
It's really difficult, isn't it? I read this article in the local paper today, which I didn't quite know how to take it. It's quite interesting. So it's Francis Drake, well-known slave trader and general all-round explorer, whatever, a load of other stuff. Didn't he bring the potato back or something like that? Anyway, so there's lots of things to do with Francis Drake in Plymouth, because the 944, don't ask me to do sums, but basically the Spanish, the fleet from the English was to go and stop the Spanish from invading, was launched from Plymouth Hoe, those of you that don't know. I think it was supposed to be 450 years ago this year. I think it was either this year or last year. It's around that time. So anyway, there was an article in the paper, because obviously there's going to be a statue of him, and I think there's a whole square in Plymouth called Sir John Hawkins Square, which I think is going to be renamed. But I think they're talking about taking Francis Drake's statue down and stuff as well. But what I read in the paper, you should have a look for it, is that this story's popped up saying that Francis Drake had a special friend who happened to be one of his slaves. I don't think companion in necessarily the nocturnal manner, but I guess they were all stuck on ships for a very long time, so needs must and all of that. But I think I couldn't decide if they were trying to take it from the angle for justifying his having slaves on his ship, because he was very kind to him. He was more of his companion. They travelled together. I didn't read the whole article, mind, so, but I was a bit like, so what are they trying to say? Are they justifying not hating Sir Francis Drake because he had one special slave that actually wasn't really a slave, because he then ended up being his friend? It's like, but actually slavery put them together, so that's not necessarily right either.
Yeah.
So you can just
thousands of people were not his friends, not his companions, and what happened to them?
Yeah, you kind of can end up overthinking it, thinking, well, what are the papers trying to say? Are they trying to incite something? Are they saying they don't? Is this the way to save the statue from ending up in Plymouth Sound? It would probably dissolve the second it got dropped in there if it were. It's so polluted. But so I was looking at that, thinking, I don't quite know where to take that, really. To be fair, like I said, I didn't read the whole article, because the newspaper drives me insane, because they're not always accurate in how they report things, like most of the media, to be fair. But I just thought that's an interesting talking point. What they are, what's the guiding thought of that article? So you should have a look at it.
Yeah, I will have a look at it for sure.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I think that I'm hoping that more of us, I mean, those that didn't before, are now questioning the sources of so much information that we get.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's always good to raise awareness, but like, it's like this is proper like critical thinking going on, isn't it? From lots of us.
Yeah, and I'd hope so, because it's you just can't. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you're walking a fine line of saying to people, don't trust anyone, which can make people very unhappy and very unwell and slightly paranoid. To overuse an overused term, but then it's actually, yeah, do your own research. But then even so, don't just read the first article on Google and believe that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, check the sources. I remember when I was at uni, I think I was actually doing my A-levels, did a module all about primary and secondary information. Where's it come from? Check your sources. And it's sociology as well, actually. It was, who is funding that piece of research? It's interesting if you go back slightly off tangent, but Nestle were the company that funded quite a lot of research into actually powdered milk is fine for babies, stop breastfeeding, give your baby powdered milk, it's fine. And actually Nestle were the company behind that, and they are quite a large producer of baby milk, and it's kind of what is who is trying to achieve something. Yeah, but you kind of have to think about, what are they going to get out of it? Who is funding the research, and what do they want to achieve?
I remember being in sixth form and boycotting Nestle for a load of reasons, but unethical reasons.
Yeah,
the thing is, right, you can look on Google, and yes, you don't look at the first, second, third thing, you keep going. But the way that there's a word for it, isn't it? When it kind of like gathers the information it thinks you want and gives it to you. And so
algorithm.
That's it. Yeah, it's really hard to look objectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're trying to help you, but sometimes not helping you at all.
No, not at all. And I think it's all based around your searches, isn't it? So if you just look for stuff that's quite current affairs, media, BBC websites and stuff, they will always be the ones that will come up first. So
and then it reaffirms what you already think, rather than helping you to think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's it's so important to try and, but I think even though you do your own research, I think it's okay to sit on the fence and not decide to have a decision, have a set opinion, because I think people's learning is constant. It's a journey. You're not always gonna, yes, there's certain things that are, bullying is never right, abuse of people is never right, but actually it's about, with some of the other bits, it's having about that balanced view, isn't it, actually, of saying, and actually being all right to say, I don't know if I have got an opinion about this.
Yeah, sometimes sitting on the fence is okay, and then sometimes, like, when it comes to justice, you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's not having the wisdom, isn't it? Knowing when to give yourself, you know what, I don't know, and until I know, then I will decide. But some things are really obvious, and some things do take a little bit more figuring out.
Moral dilemmas, and I don't think there's anything wrong with a moral dilemma, because it does make people talk and think, really. And I think, people need that space to learn how to think, don't they? Or trust what they think sometimes.
What was the Maya Angelou quote you gave me? Do the best you can until you know better. And then I think for me, like, you just keep wanting to know. Yeah. Because like anything else, when you stop learning, you stop growing.
But it's also, I think some of this goes back into like people being harassed, like, for things that have gone on in our past generation. So, for example, my mum probably smoked all the way through her pregnancy with me. But that was in the 70s. I think everybody did it then. And I'm not saying it's right, but actually information now has evolved and changed. So actually there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't. That's just a naff example, but but don't then have a pop at the people in the 70s that didn't have access to that information.
Yeah, it's where a pint of Guinness or half a Guinness when you were pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
They did what they thought was the best thing to do, and now we know better.
exactly. And but it's about, you know, and goes back to cultural roots, isn't it? It's like it was, you know, we have to look at things now in with a bit of empathy for the history in some respect, because they didn't necessarily know any better, but the people that now doing stuff that they should know better, or they could know better if they chose to educate themselves in a different way, stuff wouldn't still continue.
So do you think, like when we were younger, as opposed to young people now, do you think it's changed much?
In what respect?
Like, do you think it's easier now to walk confidently and comfortably in your own skin, like down the street?
I don't know, actually. I think Plymouth's a weird little place, I guess, which is where I spent most of my teenage years. No, is it easier for young people? No, I don't think it is. I think it's because human beings being human beings will always find something to pick at you for. So whether you've got bright red hair, bright ginger hair, you're freckly, you're size 10, you're size a million, you know, it doesn't really. Or because in Plymouth city centre, there's a thing, this weird monument thing called the sundial. It's a sundial.
Oh yeah.
And you walk through town and there's like, so you get the emos by Dingles, you get the other group by the sundial, you get the other group over there, and it's just a minefield for young people. And actually I know a lot of young people that because of that will not walk through Plymouth city centre anymore. They're too scared to do it. Then they used to, you know, at the top of town you'd get the Mackie bashers, or the town smashers as they're called. So, you know, it's I don't actually think it's any different. I just think the reasons why groups form a bit more diverse, so it's not just limited to gender or race or colour of your skin anymore. It's for the clothes you wear, and it always kind of has been, but it's just I've noticed it more now. But the thing is, you know, a lot of our young people just don't like going into Plymouth city centre on the, you know, because it's full of other groups that will pick on them for a different reason.
So when your lad is a teenager, how are you going to help him? Sorry?
Oh, he's never leaving the house. Told you that.
How are you going to help him navigate through that? Yes, he's going to be confident and he's going to know that he's well loved and all that. But, you know, how are you going to help him to know that he does have a voice? And, you know, he's a right to use it.
Absolutely. I think it's difficult when it's your son. You know, I think it is sometimes up to the next generation, the older generation. I guess we're that now, aren't we? Kind of middle generation, is to actually suck it up what other people think. You know, actually, it's really hard to get evaluation and feedback. And my son will tell me lots of things that I don't like. He will tell me I'm not happy because I've done such and such. And actually, when you sit there and if you're able to reflect, you think, oh, actually, yeah, no, I can understand that must have been really hard for you. But I think it's, you know, and it is about, I guess, the way you give people a voice is dealing with your own internal monologue of how you feel about things, you know, because it's not always personal. You know, I think we've been very privileged in our profession, I guess, and a personal life to be taught how to be a reflective practitioner, even though it really stings when a young person is telling you the reasons why they weren't particularly happy or why they didn't feel supported or things like that. But it can sting, and your ego will get stamped on at times. Mine has been when I've got, no, I did that. But it is about having that confidence that they're allowed to have a voice, even though it might not be, and it's not being so defensive. I think all services are very defensive. It's hard not to be defensive. You do have to try and take it on the chin sometimes. And I'm not saying I do that very well all the time. I often ring you up and go, Esther, this has happened. Help.
Venting is all right, you know, sharing, you know, with the right people, venting is all right.
Yeah, but it's I think if my son couldn't tell me how angry I've made him, instead of acting, tell me why, you know, I'm constantly, he's only little, trying to tell him, use your words, don't just flounce off across the house and slam doors. It's about use these words because they are a lot more powerful. because I will listen, whereas flouncing doesn't get you anywhere. And I think it, you know, for me, it's about helping him understand that it's all right to disagree. You know, it will be us trying to say to him, we will disagree with things, but it's about trying to find some common ground. And I think we can, like I said, he's only little, but we can communicate as much as we can. And it's that constant reassurance of, you know, we're here for you regardless, but we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for just young people in general, isn't it? It's like they're so scared and they feel so judged by a lot of social media, by the social media that their parents watch. They, you know, they will end up being judged as a result of the things that the parents have seen. It's really hard.
Yeah, and you know, as your son grows up, he will learn more and more how to distance himself from what people are saying and know it's about them, it's not about him.
Yeah,
you know,
it's not always great, you know, but sometimes you do have to take the feedback on the chin. It's as simple as that, really.
And it's easier when you're older and you've got a bit of experience to know to buffer yourself from something. You know, something does get you, but sometimes when you're young people, they just like, it's hard not to react immediately and to take a step back.
But I think it does go back to Maya Angelou's quote, doesn't it? It's like, yes, give feedback, but then also be aware that those people did the best they could when they did. You know, but it's like, you know, and it is finding that healthy balance between the two, isn't it? You know, because yes, I would hope people act with the best of their intentions most of the time, but we are human beings after all. But then it's like, actually, if that wasn't right, how can we do it better?
Yeah, so active listening skills can take time and effort to develop.
Effort is the key. I think we do live in an immediate society. You can press the button and something will be on your doorstep half an hour later, like delivery of all kinds. So I think I think we need to learn collective patience sometimes, that it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, and give and take is like it's accepting where you are. And I know the word forgiveness is a big word, but just having a little bit more like understanding we're all human and we all make mistakes, and just like, people don't often say stuff and they don't mean it. Sometimes they do, and it's obvious most of the time they do. Sometimes, you know, I might say something and you might be in a different frame of mind and you might completely take it a different way because of the mind that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and it's, you know, and some of that though is where awareness comes, isn't it? It's like, you have a responsibility, you have control over how you respond to something, or not, as the case may be. If you just choice is a weird word, but you know, that is the only thing we can kind of choose properly in our life, is how we respond to something. It's a minefield out there.
Mum used to say, I remember being younger and Mum saying, oh, she's counting, you could see Mum's counting 10. And 10 was never quite enough. Sometimes I think she counted from 100 down to 1 and then said something, but yeah.
It's having that space, isn't it? Those 10 seconds of space to go, yeah, it's a difficult one. I think everybody is especially at the moment, I think everyone's flight or fight response is being triggered massively by lockdown, isn't it? You know, and I try not to sound flippant, but it could be worse. But this is ultimate like awfulness for people, isn't it? You know, I say it could be worse, like my house is still intact, there's not a bomb about to drop on my roof anytime soon. That would trigger my fight or flight. But at the minute, it's kind of, you know, this is World War III in a different way, I guess, isn't it? Viral, but it's, yeah, I think everyone's very sensitive at the minute, which is why, you know, a lot of these conversations are happening. But
so this is a time of transition.
Absolutely.
For your son, what would you like the world to look like for him in 10 years' time? I mean, they're gonna hopefully change the education system a bit more. And
yeah. I mean, when we were looking for schools, what I was, you know, it's quite interesting that I was looking very much of what is their safeguarding, what is their policies and stuff. And the weirdest thing I saw was that they had quite a big policy that prevent the anti-terrorism stuff. And I was like, why is that everywhere? Where's their safeguarding policies? You know, I was quite like, weird. But and I guess I think for me, you know, what I was more interested in at school for him is like, do they do mindfulness? He's doing you know, he did him and his dad were trying to do some meditation the other day, and he did really well because he learned some of it from school. And I think it's teaching compassion really, that it's that fine line, isn't it, between assertive and aggressive. You know, actually be assertive with what is not okay, but be compassionate to why someone might not understand that, and try and explain your views as much as you can.
Yeah, well, that's really important, compassion, because sometimes your words can say something, but people can read your body and read what else is going on.
Yeah.
And they see that actually your words sound a bit harsh, but you look like you care. They'll get it.
Yeah. And I think for me it's, you know, and I think that's through years of working on the periphery of the social care field, is that actually I've seen a lot of workers that have had to deliver some not very happy news, but they don't do it in a very kind way, or actually there are ways that people could have really helped that person, but they chose not to. You know, and that just cripples me really, because I think, God, you had the choice to be kind to this person and you didn't want to for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's your own inner awareness of your own emotional whatever's going on for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, yeah, exactly. And it's, I guess that's because we're, like I said, you know, all of our natural instincts are being prodded at the minute, aren't they, of like fight or flight, and everyone's very sensitive at the minute. But I just think, you know, and it is that whole, it sounds a bit cheesy, it's that bit of that buzzword, isn't it? But if, you know, be anything in life, choose to be kind.
Yeah.
At the very basics, isn't it? You know, yes, be all those other things, be the superhero, be the whatever you want to be, but just also, but go with a kind heart and a good basis behind it. Because
really good place to start. Yeah.
You know, I was very proud of my son. He came home from school because he'd been doing the educare, and he came home from school with a big certificate because he'd supported a little boy who apparently was not happy being, I think he'd obviously been at home, reading between the lines, been at home with his family, and then whatever had gone on, and he needed to be looked after by the school for the day. Wasn't happy, was very stressed, because there was a lot of stressed out children at this time as well, not just their parents. And my son managed to look after him all day, played with him, calmed him down where the teachers couldn't get anywhere near. And you know, you know, I thought of all the things you could do, you were kind to him, and that's, you know, and that's all I'm ever going to ask of him. Yes, it'd be nice to get A stars, this, that, and the other, but actually, I would like you to come out in life as being a decent human being.
Yeah.
Any idiot can get an A star if I put my mind to it. Apart from me in maths, you're going to have to sit my GCSE maths for me once he gets there. But you know, actually, it's, I think, yeah, yes, they're all right to get on in life. You do need a few exams, but actually I would prefer him to be a decent human being and understand kind of, yeah.
So with everything that's going on, like, what are you most hopeful about in the future?
That I'm hopeful that history isn't erased, that it is reviewed and reflected upon. But yeah, no, actually I would open places that people can go and look about how life was in a different way,
but in a more truthful way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, you know, the problem is that these campaigns will come and go. They have a cyclical effect, and it's about, actually, we need to make these changes stick, all these voices properly heard. So I know, you know, I say to you, I've been at the job that I've been long enough that I see how things change every 3 years. They have a new emphasis on something else, but the problem is with that change, and I have no issue with change, but it's like they haven't reviewed and reflected what's gone on before. So it's almost like, well, that didn't happen. So, well, yeah, it did. If you've got a few people that have been around long enough to say, actually, how are we gonna make it so it's better? We have this chance to make it better. It's, you know, and it's about learning from all of these things and moving forward. And what have we learned? What are we doing that's different? You know, instead of it just being a big roar, and the next thing we'll hear about it is on the 31st of December review of 2020 before it gets to 2021, you know. And that's my fear, is that momentum will get lost because of the anger that's coming out, rather than the people wanting to be proactive and assertive, really.
Yeah, because we all want long-lasting change.
Absolutely. I want a nicer world for my son to live in. I just would like people to be a bit nicer to each other. I don't think that's too much to ask.
And no one person has, or one group of people has the answer, but we have to work it out together. And it is uncomfortable, and it's not nice, and it's very messy. But
it is, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, but I guess we can say that because we're older. We've been through the messiness, I guess, and it's come out the other side. I'd like to think with a lot more education and insight than we went in with. And I think there is a voice of change for lots of it. You know, there's lots of change, you know, there's lots of things in the ether. I think it feels like people are beginning to want to embrace change more, because they've been so tied up in their little bubble in lockdown that they don't want to go back to how it was. But then some people do, because they're scared of what it will look like when it's not back to normal. But being scared's okay, but it's hand holding those people that are scared, isn't it? Yeah. And who's willing to do that?
They want it to go back to normal, but there is no normal anymore. This is a new thing we can create together.
Yeah. What is normal anyway?
Yeah.
It's everybody's life is different, isn't it? And so it should be. That makes life interesting. We love difference. It's interesting. It's exhausting sometimes.
Absolutely. So Jenny, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
So yes, I love the Maya Angelou quote, and I just love, be kind and just be decent humans to each other, and be kind to ourselves, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you guys for listening. Please follow me on Instagram. It's Young Limitless Podcast, all one word. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.